There's a liquid that costs less than your morning coffee, and it can stop corrosion permanently, not slow it down, not delay it, not protect for a few months before the problem comes back worse. It stops it completely, irreversibly, at the molecular level. One simple application on bare metal and the rust that would normally eat through your tools, your car, your equipment, never returns. And yet, almost nobody uses it. Think about that for a second. Every year, people spend billions replacing rusted parts, car frames, brake lines, outdoor gear, structural steel, because they believe corrosion is inevitable. You've probably been told the same thing your entire life. Rust is just something you have to manage. Sand it, coat it, repaint it, repeat the cycle again and again. That's the system. That's the routine. That's the cost of owning anything made of metal. But what if that entire belief is wrong? What if the idea that rust is a recurring problem isn't a fact, but a narrative? Because the truth is, this isn't a new discovery. This isn't some experimental technology hidden in a lab or locked behind a patent. This is something so simple, so accessible, that you could mix it yourself in a plastic bucket with materials that cost just a few dollars. No industrial equipment, no professional training, no expensive coatings, no endless maintenance cycles. Just a basic solution. That changes everything. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. If a $3 mixture can permanently eliminate the need for rust repair, repainting, replacement parts, and professional treatments, then what happens to the industries built around those problems? What happens to the companies that rely on corrosion staying unsolved? What happens to the billions of dollars generated every single year from something you were told could never truly be fixed? Because they didn't stop using the solution because it failed. They stopped talking about it because it worked too well. And once you see how simple it really is, you'll start to question how many other unsolvable problems were never meant to be solved in the first place. Long before modern factories, before chemical brands, before industrial coatings filled store shelves, people had already solved this problem without machines, without patents, without marketing departments telling them what to buy. The discovery didn't begin in a laboratory. It began by accident. In ancient workshops where leather workers soaked raw hides in vats filled with crushed bark and water, something unexpected kept happening. Tools left inside those dark, tannin-rich solutions came out different. Knives that would normally rust within days stayed clean for months. Iron buckles pulled from the liquid carried a thin, almost invisible coating that resisted moisture, resisted air, resisted time itself. No one had set out to create a rust solution, but the result was undeniable. And once one group noticed it, the knowledge spread. Blacksmiths began treating their tools before storage. Armorers applied it to weapons before long campaigns. Soldiers carried equipment that lasted longer, performed better, and failed less often under harsh conditions. Across continents, cultures separated by thousands of miles, and with no way of communicating, arrived at the exact same conclusion. Different plants, different methods, same result. That is not coincidence. That is chemistry revealing itself through observation. Centuries later, science finally caught up. In a cramped European laboratory, a chemist isolated the active compound responsible for this effect and documented its reaction with iron oxide, the flaky, destructive material we call rust. What he found changed everything. This substance didn't just sit on top of the metal like paint. It didn't act as a temporary shield waiting to wear off. It transformed the rust itself, converting it into a stable, bonded layer that sealed the surface from further damage. The corrosion wasn't covered, it was converted, And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Because every modern solution you've been sold is built on the assumption that rust must be fought from the outside, coated, blocked, delayed. But this process works from the inside out. The problem becomes the protection. The damage becomes the defense. Once the reaction completes, there is nothing left to spread, nothing left to return. By the time militaries began formally testing it, the results were impossible to ignore. Treated metal lasted longer, failed less, required fewer repairs. In controlled environments designed to accelerate corrosion, this simple solution outperformed far more complex, far more expensive alternatives, which raises a question that should feel impossible to ignore now. If people discovered this centuries ago, if science confirmed it, if even the most demanding applications proved it worked, then why isn't this the standard solution you've been using all along? And this is where the story stops being about chemistry and starts becoming about money. Because the moment you understand that rust can be permanently neutralized with a solution that costs just a few dollars, an uncomfortable truth begins to surface. Entire industries, massive global industries, depend on the idea that corrosion is never truly solved. Think about how many products exist only because rust keeps coming back. Primers, coatings, underbody treatments, replacement parts, maintenance services. Every one of them is built on a single assumption: you will need to fix the same problem again. Now imagine what happens if that assumption disappears. The automotive aftermarket alone generates hundreds of billions of dollars every year. A significant portion of that comes directly from corrosion-related damage, parts that fail, components that degrade, surfaces that must be repaired or replaced. If a $3 solution eliminates that cycle, where does that revenue go? If rust becomes a one-time fix instead of a recurring expense, what happens to the entire system built around maintaining it? This isn't about a dramatic cover-up. There are no secret meetings in dark rooms, no single moment where someone decided to erase the truth. It's something much quieter and much more effective. When a simple solution threatens a complex, high-profit model, it doesn't need to be banned. It just needs to be reframed, repackaged, renamed, marked up. Take a look at the shelves in any hardware store. You'll find products marketed as advanced rust converters, industrial-grade treatments, proprietary corrosion solutions, different labels, different branding, different price points. But if you look closely, really closely, you'll start to notice something familiar in the ingredient lists. The same fundamental compound, hidden behind technical language, blended into formulas, sold back at 10, sometimes 20 times the original cost. The chemistry never changed. Only the story did. And that's the part most people never question. Not because the information is unavailable, but because no one tells you to look for it. You're taught to trust the label, the brand, the price tag. You're taught that real solutions are expensive, complex, and out of reach. But what if that belief is the real product being sold? So let me ask you something, and I want you to answer this honestly in the comments. If a permanent solution to a billion-dollar problem actually exists, do you think it would be promoted? Or quietly buried under layers of marketing, pricing, and rebranding until it becomes unrecognizable? Here's the part where everything becomes almost insultingly simple. The solution you've been hearing about this entire time is called tannic acid. Not a rare chemical, not a patented formula, not something locked behind industrial supply chains. It's a naturally occurring compound found in things as ordinary as tree bark, tea leaves, and plant extracts. And when it comes into contact with rust, iron oxide, It doesn't just sit on the surface like a protective layer. It reacts with it. It transforms it. The unstable, flaky corrosion is converted into a stable, bonded compound that seals the metal from further damage. In other words, the problem becomes the protection. And applying it doesn't require expertise. It doesn't require special tools. It doesn't even require perfect conditions. A small amount of tannic acid powder mixed with warm water, just enough to create a dark, tea-colored solution, is all it takes. You brush off the loose rust, apply the liquid evenly, and within minutes, you'll see the surface begin to change. The orange-brown corrosion darkens, stabilizes, and locks itself in place. Give it time to dry, apply a second coat if needed, and you've created a foundation that can last for years without the cycle repeating. No endless sanding, no repeated coatings, no returning to fix the same damage again. And the most important part? This isn't theory. It's been tested in real conditions, over long periods of time, in environments far harsher than anything most people will ever face. Treated metal holds, untreated metal fails, not over decades of speculation, but over seasons, years, and repeated exposure. So now you know, not just what works, but why it works, how long it's been known, and how easily it can be applied. And once you understand that, it becomes very difficult to look at rust or any unsolvable problem the same way again. If this changed the way you think, even slightly, take a second to support the channel. Subscribe, and share this with someone who's tired of paying for the same problem over and over again. Because every share helps keep knowledge like this from disappearing into the background. And stay with me, because in the next video, we're opening another vault. And this time, it's something most people throw away every day that could generate enough heat to keep you alive in a complete blackout.